I never heard Brad really curse, and he cursed us out pretty good. I didn't know who was coming in the locker room, but he came in and started screaming, and I jumped. So I was like, pretty much, we need to get it, under wraps. I knew he was pretty upset, and I heard we have no food on the plane, so I'm pretty sure at halftime he called, for no food. So hopefully, we don't have to get him that mad again.
All right, so it's part two. I say, all right, it's part two. Let's talk about Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens has been pretty high all year, and then ever since the Isaiah Thomas trade, the team has drastically changed. Now,
yes.
Getting rid of Green, getting rid of Rondo, they actually continue to improve, which has been pretty remarkable, but it's really because
What's happening in Dallas, by the way?
I know, Jesus Christ, what is going on there? Also, Jeff Green, 4 for 13 the other night.
We could do a part 3 on Dallas, but we won't.
Actually, very quickly before we even go into everything, I wanted to say this after the last game because the timing's not as good anymore. But Larry H. Russell, the producer of Celtics Beat podcast, which I appear on and is the best Celtics podcast. It's just about the only Celtics podcast as far as I know. There's very few of them. But they have big name national guests on every single episode. He did an interview with Chris Wallace that you can find on CLNS Radio. Chris Wallace, former Celtics GM, current Grizzlies GM. A lot of good insight, especially on Jeff Green. They talked about how much they love Jeff Green. How amazingly, Chris Wallace actually said he might be trying to sell his recent trade to keep his job, although I think his job security is pretty strong. He said that he loves Jeff Green's energy and how Jeff Green does so many things off the ball that aren't in the box score. Now, watching him for the last few years, I'm not sure exactly what he's saying, but of course Green's in a different situation where
they're
it might work out for him.
They're winning. I don't think they have any regrets about the trade. I really don't, because they're winning, and that's why they brought him there. He's starting. There's a little debate now whether or not I'm saying there's debate inside the organization, but I think fans are starting to wonder if Jeff Green should start or if Tony Allen should start. Two completely different players, if you ask me. I think I like Tony off the bench only because he's got that energy and that defensive intensity where I'm not sure if Jeff Green would have the same sort of, as we know.
And you remember how things went for Jeff Green when he came off the bench here. It was disastrous.
Yeah.
It was really bad. But then he was starting, got his rhythm, and he played really well. So let's focus on this team. So Brad Stevens loses Rondo and Green. They continue to improve. Smart continues to improve. Bradley
loses Sillinger too now.
And then of course that. But trade for Thomas. Thomas, of course, solves their biggest problems. We've talked about that a lot of times.
Yeah.
They have the triple penetrator, opens up the offense for everybody else. But they lose Thomas for these 2 games here, and they continue to play well. They beat Orlando in a revenge game that, isn't that surprising. But that win over Memphis
was surprising the way it started, though.
Sure, that is true. But the win over Memphis was huge. I mean, that was, you look at that win, you look at the Atlanta win, you look at the near win over the Warriors. That's kind of like the 3 hallmark games for this team that kind of show that they can really compete with, of course, Atlanta, who they might be facing if they grab that 8 seed. But so they beat Memphis without Isaiah
Miami
Thomas.
was a good win on the road.
That's true. That's a good win. And we'll see
what
happens.
On the road. Those are good wins.
So there's a lot of good wins. They're playing really well. That's the point of this conversation. Right. So what is happening with this team right now? Now, we've heard a lot of guys talk about the fact that Brad Stevens has been really important to them. It's all happening. It's happening very fast. Brad Stevens is going from maybe one of the 15 best coaches in the league to now he's starting to really catapult towards the upper. I mean, Popovich has said many times he goes to Brad Stevens for advice on life, wine, marital relations all the time. But so what are we seeing different out of this team? What is different about the way Brad Stevens is running this team? Or is it just
experience is one. Okay. I mean, I think that's the number one thing is experience, not just for Brad Stevens, but for the players under him. I mean, this is a guy who rarely do you come into the league as a first-year coach and you have success. Never do you come into the league as a first-year coach on a bad team and have success. So wins and losses, you look at it and say, well, what the heck? What is this guy doing? But if you watch the team, if you follow the team from last year to this year, you see the progress, you see the growth, and most importantly, you see the trust that these guys have in Brad Stevens. They can't go a single post-game interview without mentioning this guy.
It's incredible, right?
They can't. I mean, no one's telling them to do this. I mean, Brad Stevens is one of the most humble guys, one of the more quiet guys, and just reserved guys that I've been around, especially as an NBA coach in a league that's so many characters. He's not one of those guys. So I mean, I think they're going out of their way to maybe show this guy is really helping them as a team become more confident, more unified. They believe in what he says. They believe in the plays that he draws up. And I think when you have a confident coach, and he's level-headed. Rarely ever do you see him freaking out on the sidelines good or bad.
You see him angry as hell on the sidelines, but he keeps composure.
Yeah, right. He keeps his composure.
It's the anti-Doc.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I think that sort of confident, and the way he is, it rubs off on his players. They see how he is. They they react the same on the court.
Now, Brad Stevens, you're talking about his humble demeanor, all that kind of stuff. Now, Evan Turner, during his post-game press conference, said that Stevens walked into the locker room after the game and started screaming and cursing at everybody. And it was funny.
Which I love. I want to see that sometimes.
That's awesome. And that's what we've heard. We've heard so many people talk about how Stevens is this disturbingly hyper-competitive guy.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he's the kind of guy that's going to be super composed in front of the cameras, gets in there and screams, "You mother," and we don't want to make Kyle bleep everything out, so we'll save him the work. But it was great to hear that. And you saw Stevens, he came to the podium tonight. He seemed like a little kind of wired, just a little bit. I don't know if it's because he keeps saying grinding over and over again. He's starting to grind out there.
I think he's just pumped.
Yeah, seeing Tony Allen, the grind father, up close, maybe he's learning a little bit. The grind father was grinding the other night.
Yeah.
But the demeanor of Stevens has been more positive, obviously, because they're winning more. But
he's starting to see it, like, results that he wants to see, you know?
But, there's a lot of coaches that I think have the similar philosophies, mantras, and their kind of conviction and dedication to their philosophies. And Stevens, obviously, from a philosophical point of view, has been very good. But your conviction in holding that up against losses and adversity and injury, trade, all that, is extremely difficult. Stevens has dealt with it deal with all those kind of things, more than just about any other coach that we've ever seen, and at least while we've been around covering the NBA. I mean, he's had all of his stars traded away. He's had his best star remaining injured. I mean, all this kind of stuff that's happened to him. Young team, not much veteran leadership on the court. And he has continued to improve this team. He's stuck so hard and fast behind the scenes and out in front of the cameras and on the court to all the things that he believes in. And the players are believing in it now, and it's actually working. And we see Brian Shaw, for instance, everything went exactly the opposite way for him, and his players gave up on him very quickly.
He couldn't relate to his guys.
Yeah, and there's some issues on Brian Shaw's end. But the point is that it's pretty incredible to see the way Stevens has taken this young team, who frankly are playing way beyond their talent level right now, beating all these really top tier teams. They're playing way beyond their talent level, and it's clear that his philosophies worked, and his ability to keep his players believing in those philosophies was so vital, and that's what makes a good coach. And that's why Greg Popovich has been able to get all of these players to sacrifice their games for the greater good. Stevens is getting the same kind of thing, and you're seeing a team that seems to be kind of running in a similar fashion to the way that San Antonio runs, without the talent that they have there. Yeah, exactly. So they're kind of a mini Spurs, much in the way that the Atlanta Hawks have been.
No, I agree. And I think another good thing that Stevens has going for him is there's not a ton of pressure on him. I think he has Danny Ainge's 100% support. I mean, Danny Ainge,
and Wake Grossbeck and Steve Pavliukas, which
from
is
the
even
top
more
down. Yeah, exactly. I mean, these guys aren't making it easy on him. We already went over the moves that they've made for him, from last year to this year till now. This is the best. This is the best time for him because he knows that this is the team he has right now. He doesn't have to worry about what's going to happen next week, who's going to be out the door for this reason or the next. If he can get his guys healthy, if Isaiah Thomas can come back healthy, he's got something that's working for them. They believe in it, he believes in it, and they're starting to see it, and that's all you need. Sometimes you just need to see it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And he hasn't changed anything. He hasn't changed his coaching philosophies. He hasn't changed the way he acts or thinks or the way he works. And I think that's another thing. I think he's such a hard worker. I think a lot of the players see how hard he works and how he doesn't take nights off. There's no such thing as an off night. You know what I mean? And I think that when the players see that, they feel the same way. And these players, you talked about it, they're playing above their level right now because nobody really believed in them either. I mean, they were left for dead. Everyone was talking about how they should lose, right up until the All-Star break. And now all of a sudden, I think they've won 8 out of their last 11 games. That's up there. That's top 3 in the league right now. I think it's up 3 or 4 top records in the last 11 games. And in the East, the only team with a better record than them is the Pacers over the last 11
Unfortunately,
games.
they're competing for a
they're
playoff
playing tomorrow,
spot
they're playing tomorrow, which is going to be a great game. I can't wait for that. But yeah, everything's sort of clicking for them at this moment, and it's just it's not really a surprise because I think we all kind of thought that at some point, the way everyone was so high on Brad Stevens, that we were going to start seeing it on the records.
All right, lightning round, boxing ball. So for me, boxing out, Evan Turner, 16 points, fourth quarter. And then I'll give Phil Pressing my baller of the night because it's great to see him come back, have a 10 and 10 game in pretty much his first game back from his long absence of being buried in the bench.
Yes, and hope he needs to do it again tomorrow.
Yeah,
because they're going to need him. They're going to
against
call him
George
for
Hill.
again.
Yeah,
it's going to be a tough one. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that they're going to need him big time on Monday. I am going to predict that Isaiah Thomas does not play on Monday.
Hot takes.
That's my prediction.
All right, so lightning round. Boxing
Lightning
ball.
round, sorry. Boxing is going with the Magic here. Alfred Payton, 4 for 15 from the free throw line. That is Rajon Rondo-esque. That is that bad.
That's a low blow and high praise, of course.
And also in comparison, Celtics played hack up Payton tonight, which seems we're starting to do on Rondo. I mean, this guy, Payton, can get to the hoop when he does. He's a great player. He's going to have a great future, but his shot is awful. I think he's a 14% three-point shooter right now, and he hit a three-point shot tonight, obviously, but bad shooter, horrible free throw shooter, 4 for 15. Player of the night is Evan Turner. We already talked about him in the last video, 30 points. He was shooting the ball into an ocean tonight, 6 for 6 in the fourth quarter, 24 points in the second half. He was their closer.
Let's not belabor the point here. 4 for 15 from the line by Alfred Payton.
Yeah.
He did have 20 points and 9 assists. So
right.
that was pretty damn good. But the hack of Payton strategy worked wonders.
But if you can't hit free throws, you're not going to be in there at the end of the games if they need you.
I guess last thing for me tonight is I was interviewing Victor Oladipo after the game. I was the only one left there. And then right as I was starting to interview him, Nick Vucevic ripped the loudest fart in the corner of the room. And everybody looked over, and we were all like, holy. And Nick just looked up and just smiled and shook his head. And I told him it was a nice fart as I was walking out, and he just said, it's what I do best.
Yeah, Phil was unbelievable. And he's been there ready, game in, game out. Hasn't really gotten the opportunity, but he hasn't bowed his head at all or been upset or anything like that. He's just been an ultimate team guy, and when his number is called, he delivered. It's unbelievable. The work that he puts in on a daily basis is unbelievable.